Good evening. I hope all of you are doing well. Glad I made it back in time. My flight was delayed by about 30 minutes tonight. I'm like, it's not in my hands anymore. Threw up a prayer and then we were fourth in line for takeoff a few minutes later, so we made it. Baruch Hashem. Today we're learning Maseches Taanis Daf Yud Beis. We're starting at the very last line, last three words on Yud Aleph, Amud Beis. And we've been discussing, the last sugya we learned was about Taanis l'shos. Is there such a thing as a short Taanis from a halachic perspective? Of course, people can just choose not to eat, but what happens if you choose not to eat, but the acceptance of your fast was not done kitikuna, the way it was supposed to be? So we'll discuss a number of iterations tonight of what that might look like. And at the very bottom line of Yud Aleph Amud Beis, the Gemara starts with the first of a number of phrases of Rav Chizda. Amar Rav Chizda, Hade Amris Misanin l'shos. When we say that there is such an idea that a person can fast l'shos, that has to be that he didn't eat all day. Well, if he didn't eat all day, then why is it called a Taanis l'shos? So Amar le Abaye. Abaye says to Rav Chizda, Taanis mal yasahi. That's not a Taanis l'shos. If you fast the whole day, it's a full fast. So what's Taanis l'shos? What does that even mean? So it says the Gemara, third line on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Lo tzricha de'im lacham luche. What happened was that you woke up, you were in a rush, you didn't drink coffee, you didn't drink water, you didn't eat breakfast. All of a sudden it's noon. You're like, forget it. Mincha's in 4 hours. I'm just going to fast the whole day. So it says the Gemara, in the case of imlachim luche, we needed to say that fast is not a proper fast. You have to fully accept upon yourself a fast, as we will soon learn. If you have a fast and you didn't finish fasting as the sun set, namely, if you ate at some point before the sunset, so then lav shmei taanis, and we're going to discuss this in a little bit more detail. So it says the Gemara in Yud Beis Amud Aleph 5 lines down, questioning this most recent statement of Rav Chizda that you have to fast the whole day. Do you really have to fast the whole day in order for it to be called a Taanis? Meisvei, we have a few sources that we're going to question from. First of all, Anshe Mishmar, people who are working in the Beis HaMikdash, Misanin v'lo mashlimin, they would fast for parts of a Taanis tzibur, but they wouldn't fast for the whole tzibur. As you may recall, a person who's sitting and learning, he's not allowed to fast on a Taanis tzibur. He's not nowadays. I don't know how it works out with mice. I presume everybody fasts. I don't know, but l'chora the kula should have applied. And the Gemara here says that when the Kohanim were doing the avodah and it was a Taanis tzibur, they would fast a little bit, but not the whole day. So, but they were fasting a little bit, which implies that the fast was worthwhile. So it says the Gemara, Haim, that's not a fast. Haim litzure nafshe ba'almu. That was just to join the people, just to show that we're a little bit like you, but it's not a Taanis mamish. A Taanis mamish is the entire sunlight hours. So that's how we get out of that question. So let's try another question against Rav Chizda. Tashma Damar Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok, Ani mi bnei banav shel Sanav ben Binyamin. I am a descendant of the family of Sanav, the child of Binyamin. And we learned in a previous Masechta that this was one of the many families who had the zchus of bringing wood for the Mizbeach. And the day that they were supposed to bring the wood was on the 10th of Av. So let's see how things played out. It ended up playing out one year that the 9th of Av fell out on a Shabbos. And of course, we know that the only fast that trumps Shabbos is Yom Kippur. So then that year, they made it into a Taanis Nidche v'dachinuhu la'achar Shabbos. They made it that the fast of Tisha B'Av was on the 10th of Av, which was really their day. That was their yontif. They treated the day that they were able to give the wood to be like a yontif. The his aninu, we did fast that day, but we fasted on that day. But v'lo hishlamnuhu mipnei sheyom tov shelanuhu. It was so this was what was in the mixing bowl. It was a Tisha B'Av nidcha, it's a 10th of Av. So the fast was a nidcha to start with, and it was their yontif. So they only fasted for part of the day. So that's our kasha against Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said that a fast is only a fast if you fast the whole day. Yet we see that the children of Sanav, I just noticed this on, I don't know if this is correct what I'm about to say. Samech minus nun is Yud, right? Sanav, Yud Av. I don't know. I'm just saying that was the date. That was their date. I don't know if it's correct. I don't know if I didn't see any Mar Makomos. I'm making it up entirely. It's Chassid Shavor, no? I'll speak to Rashi. But it does look kind of, does it say that on the side or a little dalit? What does the dalit say?
Unfortunately, there's an amendment of the text.
Okay, that's not, that works against me. But it's not real Torah, it's Purim Torah. I'm just saying the numbers work out, that it is the 10th of Av. Anyways, Kasha, so how do we answer the question? Even their fast, says the Gemara, Hasam Nami Litzure Nafshe Ba'almahu. No, they were just joining the people. Really, that day, when Tisha B'Av is Nidche, it's pushed off to the 10th of Av. And as a competing factor, it's their Yontiv, so then we could be more lenient. This is where you see poskim give kulas, where they do what poskim calls their mitzaref. They combine feature X with feature Y. Can you eat on the 10th of Av? When it's a nidcha? No, you can't. It's your yontif, throw it into the mixing bowl. So there are shilas and poskim about What do you do, for example, a dugma with on Yom Kippur or on a fast day with the wine at a bris? Okay, that's good. Shiloh, you're supposed to lick it at te'ima. You don't even have to make a bracha according to some poskim, but you're making a bracha bori pri hagafen anyways on the chashivas of the mitzvah. Today I did a bris, and I see this under chuppahs, but maybe because of COVID, I don't know. The mavarech for the bori pri hagafen, instead of drinking the wine, he tilted the cup and spilled some wine on his hand, handed me the cup, and licked his fingers to be yotze the bori pri hagafen. And then he told me a gavaldik ma'isa after the bris. First time I've ever heard such a thing. He said, "I'm so happy that you wear gloves." This is a Haredi Rav in Detroit. "I'm so happy you wear gloves." I'm like, "Me too." And I said, "But why do you say that?" He says, "Because here's what nobody thinks about. The moel who just did the bris sticks his fingers inside the wine that I have to drink, and you're not wearing gloves? No, thank you. I don't want to be mitzaref in that." It was beautiful. I said, "You're welcome anytime. I always wear gloves when I do a bris." It was just a funny mice. I've never heard of such a thing. But he tilted the cup. Huh?
Even though some say it's like chatzitza.
Yeah. Even though some say it's a chatzitza. That's not in halacha.
No,
Yeah.
people know what they're talking
No,
about.
he didn't know what he was talking about. In Achanami. One, we'll call it. Yeah. So anyways, they got out of this by saying that it really wasn't their day. And the Gemara presents still a third question against the Shita of Reb Chizda, who said that a fast is defined as fasting during all sunlight hours. Third of the way down, Tashma, Damar of Yochanan, he says in Idavin Kivasikin, and before he started Shacharis, he said, "I'm going to be fasting until I get home." This was his dieting. I don't know what was he doing, but what does it seem like that a Taanis can be short? Taanis l'shos. So then, how could it be that Reb Chizda is right that you can have that a fast is only defined by all sunlight hours? Says the Gemara, no. This was a ruse. He was playing a chess game with the Nasi. He didn't want to go to breakfast at the Nasi's house. Oh, he has time, Rabbi Yochanan. I want to chaper you in halacha. Come, we're going to sit and learn. I'm going to ask you. Oh, yeah, I intermittent fasting in the mornings. It's my morning routine, and I'm done now. So he would say, I'm just fasting in the mornings, and he would talk a fast in the morning, but it wasn't halachic fast. It didn't count. It was.
Say something before mincha the day before.
We're going to discuss that in this daf, but you know that obviously, right? Taanis Yud Beis, that we're going to discuss that minhag that we have to say it in davening, some machlokes in the Gemara as to what the obligation is. So Amar Shmuel called Taanis shelo kibel alav mi ba'od lav shmei Taanis. Any fast which wasn't accepted upon the person prior to the start of the fast, namely, if you're going to fast on a Tuesday, if you didn't accept the fast upon yourself before Shkia on Monday going into Tuesday, lav shmei Taanis. V'i yasiv mai. And if in fact, without having properly accepted upon yourself, you fasted. So what is that? So Amar Rabba Bar Shila, dami lemapucha demal yazika. It's similar to this device that's used to blow air into the base of a fire. And what do? You draw it open and it brings air in. So your stomach is filled with air. And you're basically no different than that. In other words, it doesn't count. It's not considered a fast. What?
That's only for private fasts, right?
It's only for fast that you're taking upon yourself. It's not for the ones on the tzibur where nigs are by bezdin or by chazal, whatever the right phrase is. Yeah, that's correct. It's something that you are taking upon yourself. And to your question, the Gemara then asks halfway down, emas mekabile, how, when really does he accept it upon himself? So this is a machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Rav amar be mincha, u'Shmuel amar be tfilas mincha. Now, in my balabatish head, I would not have assumed the difference between these two answers of Rav saying, do it at mincha, and then Shmuel's like, do it at tfilas mincha. So let's thank Rashi in advance. Rashi is 5 lines into the wide lines. The first on that word on the line, bimincha, bisman ha-mincha. Ve'afilu b'shuk omer hareni machar b'tainis. Rav says that it just has to be past chatzos hayom, 30 minutes past chatzos hayom, earliest enough that mincha gedola that you're able to daven, no problem. But it doesn't have to formally be a part of mincha. Masha'en kain, Rashi continues, b'tfilas mincha, b'sofa, Tosefes ritzui v'tachanunim ad she'omer hareni machar b'tainis v'dafka nakat mincha mishum desamach l'tchilas yom taniso. We specifically chose that a person who's being makabel tainis upon themselves should say this ritzui tefillah in mincha, which is the closest tefillah that you have to Mariv. So that's the machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Is it just a timing question? That we need it to be, that it has to be at least mincha gedola 30 minutes past chatzos, that's shitas Rav, or do we say no, that there's some type of tefillah, it's in the Sidurim, some type of tefillah that I'm going to accept upon myself to fast? That's a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel. And Rav Yosef, who lived in the next generation, they really bridged a little bit with Shmuel, but he was the 3rd century Amora. He was the Rabbi of Abaye. So Amar Rav Yosef, kavasi the Shmuel mistabra. I agree with the sheet of Shmuel. Dechsiv b'Megillas Taanis, we have learned about Megillas Taanis, about whether or not it's still it's still to be kept and followed. We don't have the sefer anymore apparently, but we have some quotes, and here's one of them. Megillas Taanis, Lahain kol inish deyesi alohi mikadamas dana yesar. That anyone who accepted a fast upon themselves before our gzeras yesar, then the halacha is that it would then be usher for them to fast. My love yesar atzmo b'tzilo. Doesn't this imply, and this is where Rav Yosef is showing that the sheet of Shmuel is right, that it has to be part of davening. My love, Yesar Atzmo B'tzilo, that it has to be in his prayer, tzilo prayer, Tiskabel Tzilusehon, your tfilos. This is the Aramaic word for tzali, is to pray. So my love B'tzilo, my love Yesar Atzmo B'tzilo, like Shmuel. Says the Gemara, no, I could easily understand that line from Megillas Taanis differently. Lo, Aser Be'atzmo. No, that's not correct. It automatically becomes Aser. Who said anything about davening? All the point of the Megillas Taanis is that if you were Makabal on yourself prior to what Megillas Taanis said, then yours trumps, because the halachos of Megillah, the minhagim of Megillas Taanis were not forever binding. They only started once the sefer was written. And similarly, first of the long lines, 2/3 of the way down, Yud Beis Amud Aleph, Pligi Baha, there's a very similar machlokes about this between Reb Chia and Rabbi Shimon Berevi. Very early Tana and very early Amora. Very late Tana, very early Amora. Chad Amar Yesar, v'Chad Amar Yeaser. Similar two languages that we just saw. Yesar seemingly was one approach, and Yeaser is that it's automatic. Yesar is Shmuel, that you have to specifically add it in to the davening, and Yeaser is that it automatically becomes Aser. So Manda Amar Yesar Kida Amrina, and that's how we just explained earlier that Yesar is like Shmuel, that you have to add it into your davening. Manda Amar Yeaser Maihi. What is the Shita of Yeaser, the Amora, who says that the language is not Yesar but Yeaser? So says the Gemara, Tanya, 10-12 lines from the bottom, the Brisa writes, Megillas Taanis. So someone's got to put together all of these quotes and start rebuilding Megillas Taanis, right? Because they're being quoted as excerpts and throughout Shas. So here's what it says in Megillas Taanis: Kol inish, any person, diyesi alohi mekadamas dana yeaser, who accepts upon themselves a fast before we enforced Megillas Taanis yeaser. That would then their fast is going to be the one that is aser. Then they're not allowed to eat. What does this mean? Ketzad. So the Bryce in Megillas Taanis reads as follows: Yachid shekibel alav sheni v'chamishi v'sheni shel kol hashana kula. Let's say that a person accepted upon themselves to fast every single Thursday, Monday and Thursday. Why does the Gemara leave out sheni? Well, why do we need it? You don't need it. It's sheni v'chamishi. We're just so used to bahab. So whoever the initial author was who wrote in the v'sheni, someone's like, editorial error. It's sheni. It's not in triplicate. There's only 2 days of the week that you're talking about. So this is a great insight in regards to the copying over of Gemaras over the years. But that extra word v'sheni is clearly an error, because you can't do bahab and then you skip the next Thursday. That's not what it means. It's just an error as things were copied over.
Not only is it not in triplicate, it's actually became duplicate.
What does that mean?
Words. Triplicate with Monday, Thursday, Monday.
Yeah.
Because it was a triplicate, it became a duplicate.
Yeah. Oh,
That's okay.
in this case, yeah. In this case, that's true.
And
So we had to remove the v'sheni here.
there
right.
are Anshe Maisa, even our city. I won't reveal who it is. It's not me who do this. That's every Monday and Thursday.
Speaking on behalf of a friend. I
I
know.
am.
I know.
I'm speaking on behalf of a rabbinic friend.
I'll serve you dinner after.
No,
after.
I'm just letting the island know that this is.
Even on Thanksgiving.
That's that's what you're talking about. The tseir of, if you're you're a Bahab yid, but it's Thanksgiving. So after Shkia, you can have a turkey.
It's a short day.
Short day. Beautiful. All right, let's get back to it. Says the Gemara, Ketzad, how do we understand this interplay between this person who accepts upon themselves Sheni v'chamishi for his entire life, for the whole year, Shal Kol Hashana Kula, v'irubam Yomim Tovim, but then that day intersects with the day Haksuvim b'Megillas Taanis. So what do we do? So let's say that you say I'm fasting on Monday. You say you're fasting on Monday, and then that Monday ends up being a day that you're not allowed to fast as it relates to Megillas Taanis. Two things in the mixing bowl. What do we do? So it says the Gemara, it depends. If the gzera of the yachid, if the neder of the yachid came first, so then yevatel nidro es gzera seinu, then he wins. because his timing wins. He made a Kabbalah, and his Kabbalah, his neder, was prior to the institution of Megillas Taanis. If Megillas Taanis was put into effect prior to his neder, then Tevatel Gzerasenu es nidro. Then Megillas Taanis wins, and that's how we explain the language of Lo Yaseh. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, very important Gemara Alach L'Maisa, Ad Masai Ochel V'Shosa, when a person is in fact going to fast during the daylight hours, when does he have to stop eating? So says the Gemara, Machlokes. Ad Shiala Amud HaShachar, Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe was of the opinion that it's Ad Shiala Amud HaShachar. In halacha, when we speak in math terms, we often teach this to children, is that it's always 72 halachic minutes prior to sunrise, prior to Netzach Hama. And in halachic minutes, what that means is that the number of sunlight hours is always divided by 12, and whatever resulting number of minutes that is what we would call an hour. So right now, we have very, very short sunlight hours. I don't know what the shortest day of the year is. It's not so far away. A couple of weeks. So right now, sunrise, I'm making this up. Sunrise is at 7 and sunset is at 5. It's not exactly right, but so that's a 10-hour day. So that's 600 minutes. You divide that by 12, which means that every halachic hour is less than 60 minutes, which means that 72 minutes at this time of year could be 65 minutes, whatever it is. And then you look at sunrise and subtract 65 minutes. But there's another way to calculate Amud HaShachar. I don't know the halachic backdrop to it, but it has to do with the degrees of the sun as it is below the horizon, a little bit more complicated than the basic math equation, but that's not referenced here in the Gemara. But that's Rebbe.
The halachic backdrop for this Malcolm Tyre is that our Friedman Shlita insists that when there's an announcement of when the fast begins, there's 2 times given. There's the first time that you mentioned
72,
and then there's the second time based on the sunset degree, which is published in a new sefer that he was involved with.
right? I think I remember seeing it was like 7 degrees below the horizon. Maybe I remember the number.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I remember seeing it in the announcements. I've seen it. Yeah.
Differential?
So the horizon's 7 miles.
Horizon is 7 miles of vision, but the sun had to be below the horizon, the flat line. If you're at the top, if it's a circle, so they put a flat line across the top, and then what degrees below is the sun? Whatever I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a different anyways, this is a sidebar, but we'll come back to this maybe at some point. I don't know. It says the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom. That was answer number 1, is that we wait for Amud HaShachar. The second answer is an even earlier time in the morning. Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon Omer Ad Krusa Gever. When the rooster crows, that animal wakes up a little bit early. So therefore, that would be a still earlier time. You can see the little zayin next to Ad Shiala Amud HaShachar. That is how we paskin halacha l'maisa when we have daytime fasts, which is all but Yom Kippur and all but Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So then says the Gemara, a couple of qualifications on this brisa. Amar Abaye lo shanu. When is it that we have the machlokas between Rebbe and Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon? Ella shelo gamar seudaso. That's if you didn't stop eating your meal from the night before. That's a lengthy meal. You're starving. You're trying to pack it in. You start eating at 8 p.m. You finish at 4 a.m. Givaldik, no problem at all. Aval gamar seudasa. But once you finish your meal, we'll have to see how we define finishing a meal. Eino ochel. At that point, you're not allowed to eat anymore, even if it's 8 p.m. Once it's after dark and you eat a meal and then you bench, you're done. Or maybe clear your table. We'll see in a minute. So that's what Abaye is saying. The only machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon is if the meal that you started never ended. But if the meal ended already, you're done, even from the night before. And you're not allowed to eat anymore. Even if you wake up at 3 a.m., it doesn't matter. So says the Gemara.
Have it in mind before you go to bed.
The Gemara seems to imply no, but well, let's see what the Gemara's. It doesn't seem that it's allowed, but from the Gemara, not from Psak. I'm just saying that's what the Gemara implies. But the Gemara says that Abaye's shita is very strange because Esvei Rava brings a brisa that says Gamar ve'amad. If he finishes eating and he stands up, Hareza ochel, he's still allowed to eat. So how do we understand? How do we understand the shita of Abaye? Abaye said that once you're done eating, you're done. Answers the Gemara, Hasam kshalos silek. The case of Rava, where he says that you're still allowed to eat, is when the tables were not yet removed. And because the tables were not yet removed, remember they had their own little TV dinner tables, like the folding legs one, the X legs, like that. And it's perfect. It works out. I mean, they were leaning down. It was much lower to the ground, but they had their own, as long as the table was not silek. By the way, Raya and Halacha for this is silek ubirech, is that we have this, then there's a very lenient shita in the Ramah and Shulchan Aruch that the distance in time between meat and milk is silek ubirech, just cleaning away the table and benching. Nobody paskins like that. Lamaisa, the earliest shita in regards to meat to milk is 1 hour, which some of the Dutch people do hold. After that, it's 3 hours, which is the shita shita of the Pri Chadash and some of the Yekas. There is a shita of 4 hours. And then the Rambam writes Kimoshe Shos, which is a reference to 6 hours. And the shitas there are 5 hours, 5.5 hours, and 6 hours. The three of those are all under the umbrella of Kimoshe Shos of the Rambam. We just didn't know what the Rambam meant when he said Kimoshe Shos. We didn't know. So the Meiri says it's 5.5. My family, we waited into the 6th hour, which is Meduyak, and it kind of makes sense. And for those who are real Medaktikin, and they say it's actually 6. So there are people who have different minhagim. If you have a real Masorah, so you should follow your Masorah, period. But some of the Nosei Kelim on Shulchan Aruch write that anyone, this is the language in the Nosei Kelim, anyone who has a Reach Torah, I don't know what this means, anyone who has a Reach Torah will wait 6 hours. What if you wait 3 hours, you have to change your minhag? You have a family minhag. It's that reach Torah, you have to be so machmir. That's a big Kabbalah. There's Reese's peanut butter cups on the table. That's a big Kabbalah. You have some decisions to make. So we have to figure all of that out. But anyways, this Gemara does have a raya davar in regards to the Shita and the Rama of silek kubirech, that the line in the sand is not benching alone. It's also silek removing the table. Ika de Amre, some say that the qualification of the brisa that we just learned about the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Eliezer is a little different. Ika da Amrei, 3 lines from the bottom, Yud Beis Amud Aleph, that Amar Rava lo shanu, when do we have our machlokes elak shelo yishan? That's when he stays awake the whole night. Aval yashan eino ochel, but the second his head hits the pillow, I should say, the second he falls asleep, eino ochel. Those are synonymous in our home. Pillow, sleep. So the Gemara says that once you fall asleep, you're done. But then the Gemara questions Rava and flips it. Abaye asks on Rava, hang on 1 second. Yashan ve'amad, if you take a nap and then you get up from your nap, hareza ochel. No, Rava, what are you talking about? I have a brisa that says that you're allowed to eat after you wake up. Says the Gemara, Hasam, when do we say in the brisa that Abaye brings against Rava that you're allowed to eat? That's true, bimisnamnim, when you're only napping. Or as we call it in our family, resting your eyes, a phrase that we've used at our Shabbos table as children when I was a child, thousands of times, because present company included would rest his eyes. So how do we define that? And the Gemara says, Hey chidami misnamnem, what do we consider this neutral state of you're sleeping but you're not? Says the Gemara, Amar Ravashi, a well-known Gemara. We've seen this in Shas a few times. Nim velo nim, you're sleeping but you're not. Tir velo tir, you're awake but you're not. Dekaru leve'ani, if you say the person's name, they respond. Velo yode ahadure svara, they can't really give a coherent answer to any good questions. Maybe they'll respond to their name. If you remind them of something that's shagur b'fi, then they can already start responding. So it's not mamish sleeping, and that's a distinction the Gemara makes, that this is not called sleep. We also have this by the Megillah. The halacha is quoted in Shulchan Aruch that if a person is in misnam, name you're yotze. Why are you yotze? Because you're not sleeping. Nim velo nim, tir velo tir. You're kind of in the middle, and that's not considered sleeping as it relates to shutting down your ability to eat the night before a fast. And same is true by the halachos of Megillah. 3 lines down on Yud Beis Amud Beis. Amar of Kahana. We're going to actually stop a little earlier at the Mishnah, but it's quick. But I'm just going to save some for tomorrow. Amar of Kahana. If there was a person who accepted upon themselves a Taanis, Asr bin Ilas sandal, we don't allow this person to wear sandals. And we have a concern, Shema Taanis tzibor kibul alav, because we're afraid that he wasn't specific in his language, and maybe really it's Taanis tzibor, and he should not then be able to wear sandals. Heichi le'avid, what should he have said? So Amar Rabba bar Rav Shila le'mahachi. This is really what he should have said when he was being makabel upon himself to avoid the need of following the strict measures of the halachos of, let's say, Tisha B'Av. Lemachar, tomorrow, ehei lefanecha, I will be before you. The you is referring to Hashem. I will be before you b'tainis yachid. So when he specifies that it's a tainis yachid, then we don't have to worry about bringing upon him the demands of a tainis tzibur. Amrulei Rabbanon the Rav Sheshes, Hakachazinan Rabbanon the Misaime Misanaihu Va'asa leBeitanisa. We see that there are sometimes people who wear leather on a tainis, and it's not a problem. And as we learned a couple of days ago, there's nothing wrong with that in a general fast. The only fast that really should apply to is Tisha B'Av. Ikpid. However, Rav Sheshes did not like this. He was very strict about it. And what was his response? Rav Sheshes says back to him, V'amar Lahu Dilma Mechel Nami Achel. If you're wearing leather shoes, why don't you just go eat? You're breaking all the guidelines. Yeah, this is part of the fast. You don't get to just choose. And Abai v'Rava, they didn't agree with him either. Abai v'Rava me'ayle ki misaime panta. They would wear shoes. They would wear, basically, it was a piece of leather over the top of their foot. And however they would tie it, it just wasn't a full leather shoe, it was just on the top of the shoe. They would wear their right shoe on the left and their left shoe on the right. Sounds terribly uncomfortable. I'm sure that their shoes were not as well formed as our shoes, I'm sure. If you've ever seen a chalitza shoe that they have in the base in here, then you probably would agree to that. And Rabbanon debei Ravashi nafke ki chayu, they wore shoes straight up. They just wore leather shoes on regular fast days, and it wasn't a problem. Sabre, they held ki hada amar Shmuel, like the statement we saw yesterday of Shmuel of ein taanis tzibur the Bavel elatisha ba'av bilvad, that a taanis tzibur status of the restricted measures of the chamesh sinuim is only true on Tisha B'av. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rab. A person, if they don't want to fast, they can say, yes, I was makabel on myself, but somebody offered me to go out to lunch. So I'm going to go out to lunch with them and I'll fast another time. So let's just point this out again. This was Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said this in the name of Rav. And then Rav Yehuda, the luckiest guy in the world, not only did he learn under Rav, but then he learned under Shmuel. So then the Gemara says that Ki Amrisa Kame de Shmuel, when he got to the Beis Medrash by Shmuel and Bavel, and he repeated what he learned by Rav, that you're allowed to be love on a fast and then be porei another time. Amar Li, Shmuel said back, I don't agree. Was there any neder that happened here? The lo sagi, the lo mishalem. Why do you have to pay it back? It's not a big deal. It's uri nafshe kabil alei. All he was doing was being mitzar nafshe. He didn't say hareini mekabel alai shelo echol. All he was saying, he was going to be mitzar with Klal Yisrael. Imatzi, if he's able, then mitzar nafshe. Then great, let him do it. And lo matzi, lo mitzar nafshe. All of this is version 1 of this dialogue between Rav Yehuda Amar Rav and his new Rebbe of Shmuel. However, and I think the second one is more logical, it's very hard to hear Shmuel say that I committed to do a fast, but I'm not obligated to do a fast because it's just about mitzar nafshe. Sounds strange. It doesn't really seem to click with our normal language. You were makabel on yourself a fast, so you got to keep the fast. So that's what version 2 is, almost halfway down, maybe a third, almost halfway down on Yud Beis and Mid Beis. Ika de Amre, Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Lova Adam Taniso Porea. The first shita of Rav Yehuda Marav doesn't change, that you're allowed to push off a fast that you agreed to do, and you'll pay it back another day. And Ki Amrisa Kame de Shmuel, when Rav Yehuda switched Batei Medrash from Eretz Yisrael with Rab to Bava with Shmuel, Amar Li, Shmuel said, Pshita lo yehel a neder. It is nothing more than a neder. Neder milo matzi boy l'shlume umeza l'machar liyom acharina. You got to pay it back either today or tomorrow. You made a commitment. So 2 totally different versions of the Gemara. And then the Gemara tells a story halfway down. Rav Yeshua Bereder of Idi Ikla, the Bei Rav Asi. He went to the home of Rav Asi. Says the Gemara, Avdule igla tilsa. They made for him a delicacy, an igla tilsa machlokes as to what type of delicacy this is. It's certainly a very young animal. Was it a third cooked? Was it a couple of months old? A very young animal, tender meat. Okay, whatever. It was delicacy is the point. Amrulei litom marmidi. I just made you some food. Come sit down. Take a plate and get some steak. Amrulei b'ta'anisa yosivna. I'm fasting. Amrulei v'leizuf mar v'lifra. You can break your fast and you can pay it back another day. Lo savar mar lahada amar Rav Yehuda amar Rav lo v'adam taniso pareya. Don't you agree with Rav that you're allowed to break your fast here and then replace your fast another day? Amar lahu. In general, I agree with you, but here this is not a regular taanis. Here, what we're talking about is a taanis chalam. Amar lahu taanis chalam hu. The Amar Rabba bar Machasya. Amar Rav Chama bar Guria. Amar Rab. So this is 3 generations going all the way back to Rab. Yafet taanis lechalom ke'esh lanaoras. A fast, as it relates to a bad dream, is as good at dissolving the bad dream as fire is to naoras, to the remnants of flax, instant consumption, just gone. So this fasting is a very powerful way to undo the bad dream. But, says the Gemara, Amar Chizda, only ubo vayom. Only if it's mamish that day. So yes, I agree with you in principle that it's love uporea, that I can skip today's fasting, even though it was a taanis yachid, and I'll fast tomorrow. But if the reason why I'm fasting is because it's a taanis chalom, today's the day, and only today's the day, so much so that the Gemara says on the first long line, Amar of Yosef afilu b'Shabbos, even though on Shabbos we have a mitzvah derabanan to eat 3 sudos on Shabbos. Kiddush, mitzvah deraisa to have kiddush, or you can be yosei kiddush midoraisa without drinking. That we know from when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, we say by chulu. We should have in mind zachreu, but zachreu alayayin is only derabana, but the kiddush is deoraisa, just as zechira. So says the Gemara, but obviously we know that it's bo bayom because it's going to be deemed critically important to fast the taanis chalam even on Shabbos. But that's a problem because you just lost out on the mitzvah derabanan of oneg Shabbos. So says the Gemara, Maita Kante, what should we do? Says the Gemara as a response, Leisiv Ta'anisa le Ta'anisa. What we're going to do is replace the day that you fasted with another fast because you shouldn't have fasted on Shabbos. We learn a little more. Let's just learn the Mishnah. We'll learn.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
How does that stand with what we were saying before, that you have to be makabel the Taanis? In other words, you have the dream Monday night and you want to then fast Tuesday, but you weren't makabel the Taanis on Monday.
Yeah, it's a great question. What is the answer to that question? Yafet Taanis Chalam Oris. Maybe there's no opportunity to do so. And maybe it just may be the mechanics of fasting, not a halacha. But you could give such an answer that Zav is saying it's a different category of fast, that it doesn't require a Kabbalah. Or you just got to do it. Or you could say whether or not it needs a Kabbalah, fasting, the mechanics of fasting still dissolves whatever power the dream had. That's just another.
Can you
slightly
repeat the
different.
question?
It's not hedging your
Can you
bets.
repeat-
The Gemara says it works.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was, if the Gemara said earlier that you have to make a Kabbalah on your fast, otherwise you're no different than what's it called, a bellow, that thing that bellows, that thing that holds air. If it's a zero when you're not makabel the Taanis, so what about a Taanis chalom? At night you have a bad dream, you wake up in the morning, you should be fasting ubo bayom. That's a great question. So Zev wanted to say that it's a different type of chalom. It doesn't require a Kabbalah. Could be. He has a fast for the fast. He sits in a fast. It doesn't say when. It just means that he has to do another fast.
So the kasha was on Shabbos.
The kasha is because you did a Taanis Chalam on Shabbos, so therefore you need to repent for that, as it were. So because you fasted on Shabbos, you need to do something as consequence, which is fast another day, which is ironic because we wanted you to eat, but now you're fasting yet again. But it's a consequence. You can ask a kasha on the consequence. But that is the consequence. Yeah. Tomorrow's Thursday.
Yeah.
So let's push a little bit. We can get to the bottom of the page. Says the Gemara, Masnisa new Mishnah. We had learned in the previous Mishnah what happens when it rains after this date, after that date. So we said in the previous Mishnah that first the Yechidim fast and then the Tzibur will fast. And then says the Mishnah, 3/4 of the way down, Avru Elu, if you go through these fasts below Ne'enu, and then still there's no rain. Bezdin goes and Gimel Tanios Acher Salat Tzibur. Now we're up to 6. We had 3 in the previous Mishnah, 3 more fasts for the Tzibur here. You're allowed to eat at night. However, you're not allowed in all the Chamesh Sinun, and we're adding with that malacha as well. The Gemara is going to ask about that. Why is that a Chamesh Sinun? To work? Some people find work to be a tsar. Maybe dafka you should go to work. It depends on what you do for a living. So says the Gemara, not only was it forbidden to do those things, but v'noal enes hamerchatzos, they would close all the bathhouses. They didn't have in-home showering like we have. So avdu elu, let's say that you do these extra 3. Now you've done a total of 6. V'lo nanu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu still didn't let it rain. Bezdin goes on alein od sheva. There's another 7 that take place. Shehain in total 3 from the first Mishnah, 3 from the early part of this Mishnah, plus another 7. Shein yud gimel tanios alat tzibur hare elu. Yeseros ala rishonos. And these fasts are different than the earlier ones. Shebe'elu masriyan. We'll see what that means in the Gemara another day. There's masriyan. Is that with shofar? Is that with calling out? Is that davening? The noalin is hachanuyos. You close the stores. No one should be eating. Now, Visheni on Mondays, Matin im chashecha. You can open the stores a little bit of Chamishi mutar mipnei kavod Shabbos. You can open the stores entirely so people can prepare for Shabbos. Avru elu. If it were to then be the case that, God forbid, there was no rain even for that amount of time, so then we minimize our work, the binyan and building of vinati and planting fields, getting married, even saying shalom aleichem to someone. The halacha is when a person's in avelus, you're not allowed to say the phrase shalom aleichem to them. It's terribly restricted. My Rebbe told me that was one of the most painful things when he was in avelus, is that people could not say shalom aleichem.
Avelus or Shiva?
The whole 12 months. For a parent. It's very strict halacha. I mean, it's whatever strict. It's what it is. So uv'sheila shalom ben adam lachaveru ki bnei adam hanizofen l'makom. It's like someone who's been kicked out of their place. And then as well, hayichidim that we mentioned in the previous mission. Remember, was it Talmidei Chachamim? Even we're Talmidei Chachamim in this regard. Chosr misnan ad sheyitzei Nisan. They fast up until Nisan. Yatza Nisan v'yardu geshamim. And if at that point when it starts to rain in Nisan, there's rain. So that's siman klala. Shneimar lo k'tzir chitzim hayom. Then that is going to be then that is a siman klala because it's supposed to be a k'tzir chitim. You're supposed to be harvesting. The rain would ruin that. So it says the Gemara bishlam kulhu isbehu tainuk. I understand most of the list. Rechitza v'sicha v'tash mishamita. All of those things have an element of enjoyment. Aval malacha tzarhu. Why are you saying the malacha is a tzar? Malacha is not a tzar, but you're making money for your family. You're making a parnasa. It says the Gemara. The reason why malacha was included was because of a textual comparison. It says the Gemara. Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Kra. The pasuk says Kichut Tzom Kiru Atzara. It says the word Atzara and Asvu Zakanim and gather the elders. Ki Atzeres, just like Atzeres, which is Shavuos. Ma'atzeres Asur Be'asiyas Malacha. Just like Shavuos has an Esr Malacha to it, so to Taanis Asur Be'asiyas Malacha. We have the same exact thing. What does that mean? It's an Esr D'oraisa. How is that possible? The whole day is the Rabbanim. So obviously it's not D'oraisa, but because of the word Atzara as it relates to the pasuk that speaks about fasting, Tzom Kiru Atzara. So therefore we say it's problematic. Says the Gemara, if you're going to make a comparison to Shavuos, Ima Atzeres Me'orta, if we know that halachically Shavuos starts at night, Taanis Nami Me'orta, maybe we should assume that every Taanis Tzibur should start at night because you're comparing to Shavuos. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zera L'Didi Mifrashali Minei Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. You have to look at the rest of the pasuk. How does Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba explain? Amar Kra Asvu Zakanim. The rest of the pasuk says it has to be at a time when the Zakanim are called together. Dumya Da Sifa Zakanim Ma Sifa Zakanim Bayom. When the Zakanim get together, when the Chachamim get together, when Bezdin sits, it's always during the day. So too, when we fast, it's only during the day. It says the Gemara, Ve'ema mitihara. Maybe we should say that it is mitihara, that it's only in the afternoon and not in the morning. Maybe we should only fast in the afternoon. That's a famous line of the Gemara elsewhere. Shraga b'tihara, my honey. What good does a candle do when the sun is bright in the afternoon? So tihara is the afternoon. Amar Rav Shisha, that they gathered in the morning and they did not gather in the afternoon. Heichi avde, how did it all work out? So Amar Abaye, mitzafra ad palga de yoma me'ayninun b'mile demata. From the morning until the afternoon, they would analyze what's going on in the city. Did we do something wrong? They're being mefashvesh b'ma'asehim, the famous language from the Mesilas Yesharim, memashmesh or mefashvesh. So they were looking into seeing what was going on, if they did something wrong. Mikan ve'elach, riva de yoma karinan b'sifra v'aftarta. They would spend a portion of the day reading from the Torah and reading Haftarah. Mikan ve'elach ba'inan rachame. And then they would continue davening, storming the heavens in their own words. Shneimar vayakumu alamdam. They would stand up, right? And then vayikru sefer Torah Hashem Elokehem. Seemingly the beginning part of the pasuk is they were analyzing their community. The second part is they were reading B'Torah Hashem Elokehem. Revis hayom revis. So that's what the Gemara says, is that's what they were doing. That's how they broke up their day. Says the Gemara, maybe I would be able to reverse things and say that it wasn't as the pasuk said. Maybe the pasuk was being loose-lipped about the timing. Strange question. Rashi, Epoch Ana, to Palga the Yoma Kama, have the Palga the Yoma for the half day Kama, the first half of the day, Havu Karu Umiftere, Ubo Rachme, Ve'idach Palga Ma'aine. Maybe things were reversed, that they read the Haftarah first and they davened first, and then in the afternoon they analyzed the city. Says the Gemara, Lo Salka Daitach. You can't assume that because of the Psukim. The Psukim say, the pasuk reads, "Ve'elai ye'asvu kol chered b'divrei Elokei Yisrael al ma'al hagola." And then uchsivu v'mincha so erev kamti miteinasi ve'efrasa kapi al Hashem. In the afternoon, I had my hands up. So in the beginning of the day, everyone gathered together to figure out what was going on. And in the afternoon, everyone put up their hands to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What am I supposed to do? You need to give us some rain. So that's how the Gemara understands that this is in fact the correct order. We'll stop right here at Amar Rafram, and Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow we'll learn Daf Yud Gimel and as well Yud Dalet Amud Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Does the Gemara talk about why